Morning. So, I thought a lot about my first video, and I started to do a little, research here and there, and I didn't realize that, men actually get postpartum as well, um, with the whole change in life and everything. And, they say you have like sympathy pains and stuff like that when your partner's pregnant as well, which I experienced some of the uh, sympathy symptoms that of things that my wife was going through. Um, so, in this discussion and in this self exploration of what happened uh, to me and my family, um, I was myself struggling with depression. After a certain point, I had lost my job. Um, I was struggling with my dad being sick. Uh, you know, on the verge of divorce. Uh, at one point, I couldn't see my son, and I was sitting there on the edge of a bed, um, ready to blow my brains out. And all those friends and all those people that I thought would be there for me, they weren't. Uh, Even that fucking person that I was choosing to engage with on the side wasn't anywhere to be found either, and I had this really gut-wrenching realization that no matter what I was going through or what I was putting other people through as well, um, the most important thing that was to me at that time was my son and my wife. And it was a scary time for me. Like I struggle with, panic disorders and stuff like that. And a lot of times I look like I have my shit pretty level, but there's certain things that trigger me, and I start to feel out of control. And then I start to push, and I start to push till I feel like I'm safe, or I feel like I'm in a comfortable spot. Um, and I don't know where that all started from. I think pretty early on in my life, um, which, that in itself drives my wife up a wall, because she's more of a give me space and let me deal with things kind of person, and I'm like, no, we're going to hammer this out right now kind of person. Um, but I had a thought, which is, I guess, why I started to do this morning. Um, I was thinking about this time. I think my son had a hand, foot in the mouth or something like that. He was really tiny. He was very sick. He was puking. My wife became extremely enraged, very upset, and she took off. And the kid was like kind of like making motions like he wanted his mom. He wanted to be comforted. And at the time I was so hurt and upset. When this particular situation was going on, and I couldn't believe that she would just get away from her child. Because when the child's that little, like all you want to do is like make it happy, keep it safe, and protect it, and everything like that. And I'm sitting here like this new dad, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, why is she leaving? Like, why does she just freak out? Uh, and I took it really personal, and I became, uh, my internal dialogue was like, how the fuck could she do that? How could she walk away from her child? But the reality of it is, like, she wasn't walking away. Like, we hadn't even known that postpartum was a thing for her at that time. But what I know about her too is she needs space to cool down, but she was uh, full of a lot of anger and displaced emotions at that time. And unfortunately, like, the child is caught in the middle of it. Like, here we have a child who's sick. Um, he doesn't know any different, and there's not much you can really do for him to him out. But like, I'm literally getting puked on. He was like puking all over me and, like, asking for his mom, and I was just like kind of like in the spot, like, how did I get here? Like, why is this kid puking on me? What's wrong with him? I didn't know really at that time. We didn't really know it was hand, foot, and mouth, and my wife's just like failing. Like, where the fuck is she going? Why is she running away? Like, we have a situation, but then you get all these shitty thoughts where you're like, she's abandoning her child, she's abandoning me, she's leaving me when I need her. And it's like, what could I have done to support her better in that time? I don't know. Because I was very compassionate. I tried to be very supportive. Even though I might have had, like, those thoughts of, like, what the fuck is wrong with her? Like, I still was very confused and very willing to try to make her days easier at that time. There'd be a lot of times where the kid would cry or he was hungry, and she just, like, whether she was mad at me or just mad or just not all there, like, just blew my mind, that there was such a disconnect, because my wife in general is a very very aware person. She can be a very considerate person as well, and for the most part she's very sharp. Like, she's like super smart, too smart. So it was throwing me for a loop that, it was almost like when you go to shift your car into a gear and it pops into neutral, and you're just, motor's running and you're not really going anywhere. It was, I feel like an asshole, because at the time I was so upset with her for what was going on. I was so afraid of just watching my wife slip through my fingers as she got, deeper into it. And we neglect sleep. We neglect to eat right. My wife and I don't drink alcohol, but, coffee was always around, and coffee, I'm drinking some right now, but I had stopped drinking coffee for a while because it was causing me way more anxiety than I needed, So as I'm, studying up on things for men to do when they personally are dealing with postpartum within themselves, like, a lot of it has to do with self-care. The hard part when someone starts doing self-care is we get selfish and we're like, well, you're not paying attention to me, or you're not having a good time with me, or why are you doing, like, I want to spend time with you. And we don't realize like that the individual has to have that moment to breathe, recenter, process maybe more honestly than they're willing to be with you, um, what's going on with them. uh, you know Loving from a distance can be difficult for a lot of us, because we're pretty selfish people at times. But I watched my wife slowly stop doing all the things that made her happy, all the things that made her who she was as an individual. Um, you have a new child, so you focus on that, and it's like it consumes your whole life. Um, I definitely try to enable her to have the space, whether it was invite her friends over and I would disappear, or I'd take the kid off her hands for a little bit so she could have some girl time, or I tried to encourage her to do the things that made her happy, because in that time, like, all I saw was just someone who's really unhappy. Of course, you know, I don't know personally if while someone is struggling with postpartum, if those things even make them happy anymore, or if they're capable of finding the joy, um, in the same things that they used to do. Because, I mean, that's, I guess, one of the signs of, like, male postpartum is, like, you don't find enjoyment in the things you used to do, and I assume it's a lot to do with women's postpartum as well, more so, 'cause I think it impacts them more dramatically than it may us as men. Um, uh, and that was hard, because it's like I try to encourage her to do the things that made her happy, but nothing was bringing her joy. And then here comes my selfish way of thinking, where I think it's my problem to make her happy. And I take it real personal that nothing I'm doing makes this woman happy. Nothing. At least not long enough for it to really matter, Like, you get a little smile, you get a little moment of joy, but it's not a long-lasting happiness. And you found this person that you care so much about and that you love more than anything in the world, and all you ever want to do is just keep them happy, right? But then you start to neglect your own happiness. And that's a problem. Because now I'm a miserable fuck. I've got the love of my life who's struggling, who's never happy, who's dealing with rage. A baby that's constantly demanding things from you. And then there's your own problems, I struggled with my happiness for a long time. I used to like working in the garage and building bikes and stuff like that. And at that time, like, I stopped doing it. I was consumed with while I was working, my job, and then taking care of the kid and taking care of the wife, there'd be times where I would be able to get into the garage and start working on a bike or something, and she'd come and start freaking out on me. You know, I'd have friends over. I recall I had some friends from South America come into town, and she came out and just like started freaking out on me in front of them, and they just looked at me like, "What the fuck?" And I was like, "I don't know. This is just my everyday." Uh, There'd be a couple times where it was like she acted like I was. I remember one time that I went to a party that my friends put on every year, and she started blowing up my social media, like acting like I'm missing my son growing up or something. So I was gone for a couple hours. And it was crazy because like here I'm seeing this woman who's like dramatically overreacting. But then I have to wonder like what was going on in her mind. Like how did she feel? Did she feel like that hour was 8 or 10, or that I was, like here she's probably at home with this child, doesn't know what's going on or how to act, and she's probably intensely afraid, probably intensely anxiety. Like, what I know from her experience during that time, she was in a constant state of anxiety. But it probably seemed like she felt completely alone in that moment, like with this child, and I don't know, she probably might not have trusted herself. She might not known what to do. Maybe she started to freak out. But for me, like it was, I was just kind of like, hey, I'm going to my friends for a couple hours. Can't remember. I think I probably even tried to invite her and bring the kid for a little bit or something, but a buddy of mine had chimed in. He's like, he's not gonna miss his child growing up. He's just gone for a couple of hours. Like here comes this like grounded voice of reason who has like 5 kids. I don't know if in her head she thought maybe the kid was growing up too fast or something. I don't know, but I just remember all these little moments in that time that I felt like, man, she's being a fucking bitch. Why is she, freaking out? And don't get me wrong, she was pretty gnarly, but I have to like remember, like this isn't just about my experience. This is like me trying to understand my wife's experience. This is me trying to point out what the child could go through when your spouse is struggling with postpartum, because I think my son for a long time, because of what would go on between me and my wife, with her constantly like pushing me away or telling me to leave, he would get really bad separation anxiety, and almost like he would not let me leave. He did not want me to go. And it wasn't until I moved back into the house and he saw I was around consistently and he knew I wasn't going anywhere that he was okay, like, okay, Dad's gonna come back. And like what that did to me and my soul, like it's really hard to forgive for being a part of that situation. Whether it was my fault, not hers, or just being a piece of that situation. the guilt that I feel, because as a parent, you never want your child to be sad or hurt and scared. Like, I never want my son to be scared of anything. And for the most part, he's got no fear. But jumping off of a playground set versus like his dad coming home is two different types of fears, you know. There's a lot of shit that I wish I could have done different. Obviously, my infidelity is the biggest thing. That I wish I could take away. I'd give anything to take that away. But second to that would have been to lean on the community for help. We had a midwife. We had a pretty strong support group as far as like those women who were there for us during the pregnancy, and I wish I would have asked them. I mean, I kind of like would complain here and there, like, hey, this is going on, but like I wish I would have said, like, is there something going on with my wife that I should be aware of? Because they warned us that pregnancy and bringing a child into the world brings up a lot of early traumas for people, and it can. But like, I just wish I would have got help sooner, for my wife's sake, for my child's sake, for my sake. I wish I would have been more honest about my fear, because that was the hard part for me, and still a hard part for me today, is to admit how afraid I was in that moment. I was scared of losing my son. I was scared of losing my wife. I already felt like I lost my wife because she was a completely different person. I guess girls grow up, with that I want to get married and have a child fantasy, and some people think it's a lot easier than others. Then again, some parents out there, they just have it really easy, For some of us, it's more of a struggle to be a parent, but all I ever wanted to do was just give her anything she ever asked, and that's what I did, and that's what I tried. And it was a slap in my face when it's like, hey, you wanted this baby, and now all of a sudden here he is, and it's like completely thrown our world upside down. I just wanted to ride choppers and eat tacos. But she's an amazing mother. Don't don't take this short moment in our parenting experience for what it is. She is an amazing mother. She does more research about things for our son's health and safety and education than I've ever seen anybody really put into anything. When she gets behind a subject, she goes full steam. She's constantly looking for ways to improve our son's life, her life, my life. I'm a stubborn asshole, like I really am. I've got boxes of shit that I've been carrying around my whole life. I don't even know what the fuck's in it anymore because I've just moved all over. And she's the type of person who's like, just throw it away. And I'm like, there's a reason why I have it. Like she's always trying to like improve my life, which, it's the yin to the yang, but we don't see it, right? We just think they're giving us a hard time. But she's an amazing mother, and her getting diagnosed and her taking the steps to fix her mental health was the best thing that she could have ever done. I wish I would have been more honest, and I wish I could have supported her better. Because she's my best friend, and one of the few people whose feelings that I value more. And I think about how scared she was in that time, I think about how vulnerable she was, and now I think about how vulnerable she's not. And as a man, we're supposed to protect our women, and it's hard to protect them from themselves or what's going on with them when we don't know. We don't know what our partner is struggling with, she's got other health issues going on currently that, she was listening to her body. I, being the simple man that I am, try to chalk it up to, oh, you just need to exercise, or oh, this. Like, I knew there was something going on, but I didn't know what. But she went and got some medical professional opinion, and was able to finally find out what was going on, and that's great because she's getting that in check, But like, how do we support our partner better, maybe just let them talk and don't answer. Like, that's me. I always have to give an answer and try to fix the problem. And the hardest part for me is just shutting the fuck up and just let her talk, I'm a good listener, but when there's a problem or there's something that needs to be fixed, I want to fix it. I want to fix it right now. I want you to be happy right now. How do we support our partner, when they're struggling with health and mental issues, my dad, for example, like, struggled with cancer for 18 years, like 5 different cancers, and his last few years, he just got more and more depressed, And all he wanted to do was spend time with my mom, and she just stayed busy because, he was like a grumpy old woman at that point, just nagging, complaining, but he didn't know how to express himself either. And he got tired of fighting, and I think he knew he was sick for longer than we knew he was sick again, and chose to let himself go. But I don't know. I mean, that's what we tell ourselves happened, Maybe he wasn't as sick, and there was like some foul play, because there's a lot of shit that happens at hospitals too, A lot of things don't make sense, but I just wish I would have spent more time. Like, we get so selfish in our day-to-day lives that we forget about the people closest to us and what they're going through. And all they really want half the time is to spend time with us. And to know that we care, that we're still relevant, that they can count on us. There's a lot of great moments that I've had in my life, a lot of journeys that I've taken, and half the time I wish my wife would have been there. Wish my son could have been there. I mean, he's too young to really enjoy it, but like the older he gets, I'll take him on motorcycle rides, trips, um, stuff like that, camping trips and whatnot. Just to see some beautiful things, but um, not only was my wife struggling with postpartum depression, I was depressed. I was extremely depressed. I couldn't hold a steady job for like 3 years. My self confidence was extremely shot. Uh, I worked, I'd make money however I could. It wasn't enough. It's still not enough. I mean, we live in Southern California. It costs close to $3,000 for a shitty duplex where kids get shot at. You know, and for some reason, people think that's okay, right? But it's tough to help somebody else when you don't know what the fuck's going on with you. Like I didn't realize that I was struggling with localized anxiety disorder and panic disorders until I went and got a professional opinion and started to see a therapist. I was going to a therapist a couple times a week. I found a couple support groups. I found a grief group locally that helped me to deal with feeling like the loss of a marriage, the loss of a child kind of thing, and that was really helpful for me. It was free. There's, probably some resources close to wherever you live that might be able to help you in the same way. It wasn't until I started doing that where I was able to find a little bit of relief and realize that, okay, there is something deeper going on, I'm dealing with, my dad being sick, my wife, going through her thing, our marriage on the rocks, feeling like a failure as a father, then you're dealing with not having a job. It's like I had the wind taken out of my sails. And the hard thing that was for me at that time too is like my wife was so frustrated with me by that point that she had no sympathy, no compassion, and really little to no support. Like, yeah, she picked up a lot of slack, right? But like she had to. I don't think it's because she wanted to, I felt extremely unsupported in that time. And, that's kind of how the tables turned, right? I wasn't supporting my wife when she was kind of going through it because I didn't know. And I don't think she really knew how deep my depression was. But I had the wind taken out of my sails. And then on top of that, to have her constantly talking down to me and breaking me down, it's like no wonder I had no self-confidence, we have to learn to like support one another and build each other up, and instead of breaking each other down. We do enough of that to ourselves. But it seems like when my father passed away last year, a huge shift happened in my life because I wasn't able to really like move. I didn't know which way, like, okay, I might need to go be by my dad's side and help him out. My mom needs my help. We should live closer to them because their time is short, that kind of stuff, which I still think family is important. Like, I still think, like, we should be closer to our family because that's the other thing to this story. My wife and I have been raising this child completely by ourselves. Like, there's no grandparents that live close. There's no sister or brother that just helps us out. There isn't any random daycare or babysitter that will just pop in when we need them. Like all our friends, like you see them posting, pictures or whatever, like have a shoot on the weekend, all this crazy shit. And like half the time we're thinking like, when are they ever fucking being a parent? Because they're constantly like out there having fun. And my wife and I for the whole 4 years that we've had this child, we've had a night to ourselves. I can count on one hand how many times we've had a night to ourselves. And that's the other part with dealing with this kind of stuff, is like building the relationship back up with your partner. It's huge, man. Like, your partner, I've heard from a couple therapists and stuff, they suggest, as individuals, you have an hour to yourself a week, and then as a couple, like, have an hour together minimum, just to kind of keep things fresh and keep things going. I mean, I can't tell you how amazing it is to have dinner with my wife without kids screaming. And I'm sure other parents can relate, right? But, when I met my wife, she was, loved to ride my motorcycle with me. I mean, that's what we would do. We'd just hop on the bike and go get tacos, or, just go up the coast, or, and like, as much as I want to go ride, I know she wants to go ride. And it's like, when the child comes along, all that takes a fucking back seat. And you start to forget why you fell in love with each other to begin with. And that's sad, I tend to digress from whatever my original point is, but I guess kind of the moral of what my thinking was last night, this morning, was, I had some situations come up when my wife was really gnarly in her postpartum that I took personal, and I blamed her for her actions. And the thing about it is, like we can't, as husbands, like, we can't blame our spouse. Not when they're unaware of the situation. And even after they get diagnosed and they're getting help, we still can't blame them. All we can do is, like, support them. And I wish I would have been more patient. I guess I could always be more patient, right? But, like, compassionate to her. As a mother, as a daughter, as a sister, and a lover, like, I should have been more compassionate to her in those times, and just focused on my child, make sure his needs were met, make sure she was okay when she got back. But it's been a journey, just being a parent. And she to this day feels like I abandoned her in that time. And there was definitely moments when I was gone. There was definitely moments where I was mentally, emotionally, physically gone. There was a lot of moments when physically I was gone, but mentally and emotionally I was right there with her. When you have such a deep connection with a person, you feel their pain, you feel their fears, their anxiety, their joy. And I wish that was different, and she didn't feel like I turned my back on her when she needed me the most, because, like, even through all this, I've been there the whole time. I would never let her struggle. She was mad at me, kicked me out, was, like, dating some other dude, and, like, I'm still moving all the shit from her house over to her new place. Like, I as bad as things get between her and I would never turn my back on her. Because she's the mother of my child, and she's also my best friend. But postpartum is a scary thing, and when we don't know what's going on, it can be a very defeating experience. And I consider myself and my family very fortunate that, like, it wasn't like one of those horror stories you hear about, women drowning their babies and shit. You know, like that's scary fucking shit. And trust me, like the thought ran through my head a couple times because like you hear those stories, you know. But you know, like my sister-in-law got it, you know, and it went undiagnosed for a long time too, and she just like was not there, like not there, and she just tuned out, you know, and it put a huge wedge in her marriage, you know, and eventually, you know, her husband bounced, but you know, she says she wished she would have got diagnosed sooner, you know, and it's hard, man. Like we don't know what's going on with our partners, you know, and I think this retrospective at all, like I just want to push awareness and compassion for the self and then for our partner, you know. And there might be women out there that think I'm an asshole, you know, um, but I'm just being raw and I'm being honest, which a lot of people are afraid to do. Um, and a lot of people don't talk about the experience for the men, and a lot of people don't talk about what happens to the child. And I think that's the most important thing here, you know. Um, but I appreciate you listening. If you have any comments, I'll take them. And that's about it. Sign off.